I'm Dan Cohen, Captain with Williamson County EMS, here on Rescue You to talk with Dr. Glenn about some things that really don't fit into any of the other categories that we've talked about thus far. So let's jump right into that. And Dr. Glenn, I'll ask you, how should people cope with the feeling that their employer doesn't care about them? That is a loaded question, and it's a really complicated one. But if you could think about that and think about addressing it from a mental health perspective.
I think the biggest thing to understand and to realize when you feel like your employer doesn't care about you is that, everything sort of goes in waves. You may have a department with really high morale and good sort of esprit de corps and camaraderie, and then it shifts and changes. And what I've noticed is that when there's a shift or when 1 or 2 or 5 people are unhappy, it tends to sort of become this really pervasive theme throughout. And what I tell organizations all the time is that you are really sort of teetering on the edge of losing your culture when there is just complaining and no problem solving. So there's a few things you can do. Number one is you can engage in being part of the solution. You can make suggestions and recommendations. You can write memos. You can take it up the chain. The other thing is that sometimes when we go through times where we feel like we're not valued at work, it's really okay to take what I call it an emotional step back. And I'll tell people, take an emotional step back, decrease the investment of your emotions and your energy in your work, reinvest in your personal life, your life outside the job.
You mean remember that it's work?
Remember that it's work.
Yeah.
Focus on your resilience outside of work, your hydration, nutrition, rest, and exercise, your family, your faith, your friends, your hobbies. And go to work and maybe just kind of in terms of psychologically, just kind of staying in your lane. Enjoy your partner, enjoy your patients, enjoy running calls, enjoy doing what you do because you love what you do. Most people do. Maybe you need to step off of a committee or a 5. Or maybe you need to just take a break from how much energy you put into the dynamics at work and the issues that you're facing, and just do work to do work, and then really go home and reinvest in your personal life.
I think that's good advice. I think is what you're really getting at. Think about work where it belongs and how important it is when you compare it to other things in your life.
Absolutely.
So obviously it's important to work and have a job, but the other things, your family should always take precedent to work whenever possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tanya, how to handle stress when you are unaware of how stressed out you actually are? How can you figure that out before your health starts to suffer? And I think this question is basically, how do you know you have a problem if you don't know you have a problem with stress?
So I think the biggest thing to understand is that if you feel like you're physically changing and you feel different, like maybe it's that your stomach is upset a lot, and you're using a lot of antacids, or you have more frequent than ever headaches, or you've got knots in your back, or you are sleeping poorly, you notice that you want to gravitate towards the comfort foods and things like ice cream and hamburgers and stuff like that. Whatever, you will start to notice that you're different. Sometimes you're going to notice that your emotions are different. You're quick to anger. You are really frustrated on certain types of calls or with the public, whereas before that wasn't an issue. So any sort of changes in you, what you do is you put your fingers on the pulse of what's going on and see how you can modify it and gravitate towards healthy again. And if you can't figure it out, then come on in. Let's sit down and let's kind of hash this out. Let's look at your life and see what's going on, and see if we need to if it's a quick fix or if it's a multi-layered approach to all the issues going on. But the bottom line is, when you start to think, feel, behave differently, put your fingers on the pulse so we can tap into that.
And I'd say there's a good chance that since most of us are type A personalities and we're going to pop off and tell other people just exactly what we think, there's a good chance that the people around us are going to have something to say about it too. If you're acting in a disrespectful manner towards them or your patients or folks in the public that ordinarily you would treat nicely.
Right, absolutely. Your spouse, significant other, and your partner, they're the first ones to notice it, right? And if they call you out on it, then listen to that.
Yeah, so don't just act like it's not there.
Right.
Okay, all right, very good. One last question that we have today. Are there support groups for first responders that you're aware of?
As far as support groups for first responders, there are a few agencies who have attempted that. I think the biggest thing for first responders is that there's still a lot of shame associated with getting help. There's still a lot of fear associated with getting help. So we've noticed that they do groups, they establish groups, and then they're poorly attended, and so they stop. So we have found that first responders, by and large, respond much better to individual therapy than to a group process. I would love to see in my lifetime for first responders to come to support groups openly and without any fear of repercussions or judgment. I don't know if that'll happen, but
So like a Paramedics Anonymous?
Yeah, so
You go through the 12 steps of
being a paramedic.
being a paramedic? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, it has been tried. I think that I think there's a lot of fear about like showing up to a group and knowing people and worrying that they're going to talk and those kinds of things. So we still rely heavily on the sanctity of individual therapy. So you can just come in and tackle that.
Well, it's good to know that that's here. Yeah, that does seem a little bit surprising that a group of people who are really very good at maintaining the privacy of others, like their patients, aren't so comfortable with the idea of that maybe their own privacy would be maintained by their peers. That's a valid concern when you're really, really worried that you might somehow be exposed in some way that you're not comfortable with or you think it might affect your job. But I think it would be really great if those of us in our profession could extend that same courtesy that we might extend to our patients or members of the public and extend it to each other. Have that same faith in each other that we're going to be able to look after one another. So that's something I'd hope to see in the future too.
Me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us to talk about things in the other category, Dr. Glenn, and we will see you next time on Rescue You. Thanks.
If you have any questions you want to ask us on Rescue You, go ahead and scan this QR code and send them to us. Please understand in no way is this a counseling session or any sort of clinical advice. If any of the content has triggered you or if you feel like you need help immediately, please reach out to your local mental health professionals or to any peer support teams that you have in your area. If you're in a crisis, here are some national resources for you to contact immediately.